Hello and welcome to the Fox League podcast. My name is Darcie McDonald, and joining me in studio today to wrap up the regular season and dissect the seasons of the bottom 9 teams are two of my Fox Sports Digital colleagues, Dan Nuttall and Kyle Robbins. Welcome to the show, boys.
Darcie.
Thanks for having us on, Darcy.
Oh, I'm happy to have you on. Debuts for both?
Yep. See how we go.
What a time. All right. Well, all the talk at the moment is about finals, but we can't say goodbye to the bottom teams without unpacking their season first and I guess running our eyes over what went wrong for them. Is there a silver lining, actually? And what does the future look like? Before we get into it, though, finals came early on the weekend in the last game of the regular season, which was a play-in clash between the Knights and the Dolphins. Knights got the win, which means Wayne Bennett and his Dolphins finish up again missing finals. So even though they finished 10th, we're going to start there because I feel like they're still the flavour of the week at the moment. Kyle, you've put your eye through them. What do you reckon went wrong with the Dolphins this season?
I think the obvious answer is Wayne's move to the Rabbitohs didn't help. He signed that he was announced to join the Rabbitohs at the end of May. They played 13 games after that and lost 10. So that's sort of the obvious answer. But I think in terms of the playing roster, injuries really killed them. Tom Flegler had his shoulder nerve injury. He only played 4 games this year. Tom Gilbert's an origin level middle. He didn't play at all this year. Jeremy Marshall-King missed nearly 2 months at the back end of the season. The Hammer had that origin injury, missed a couple of weeks there, and then he was out with origin. So I think they just sort of lost a few key guys to injury. Like losing 2 of your best middles to injury never helps anyone. Losing your best player, Jeremy Marshall-King, one of their best players, at a crucial point of the season when the season is on the line, doesn't help. And then, the Hammer stuff it wasn't a massive injury, but it's sort of enough to sort of derail them and put them off the push for the 8.
And it looked like their forwards kind of ran out of juice at the end of the season, right?
They're older as well. Like, you got to remember, it's a lot of experienced guys. Jesse Bromwich is retiring now. Kenny Bromwich is sort of getting on as well. Felice Kafusi's been played in the middle a bit. Like Ray Stone's a good, reliable player, but he's not Flegler or Tom Gilbert. He's not as punchy as those guys. So, just sort of seems like it sort of got to him a little bit.
Do you reckon as well, do you guys reckon that Herbie Farnworth didn't quite hit expectations overall? I mean, he had some great games, but overall.
100% agree. He is one who proved it last year. With the Broncos, won that Dally M Centre of the Year. Was he consistent up for the whole season? I don't think so, but in saying that, he was, his sort of flaw wasn't that bad either. He's obviously a classy player. Look, it's hard to be too critical of the Dolphins' second season in the league. Did anyone expect them to be challenging for a final in year 2? I don't know, probably not, but they were sort of right up amongst the top 4 teams there. Obviously, they weren't being talked in the ilk of like Penrith or Melbourne or those sort of teams, but they sort of did choke the back end of this season to miss out. It was to miss out from where they were. Granted, I give you that the injuries did play a part, but from where they were, I think they'll be pretty disappointed they've missed out.
Yeah, especially after that win over the Broncos. I thought, here we go. They're playing finals.
And then, the weekend, it was just, I think the refereeing decision on the weekend probably doesn't help them there. It's a different game if that gets allowed, but they just look like they got out fought by Newcastle.
But silver lining, there has to be a silver lining.
Yeah, I think there is. I think the development of their young core over the year, I think obviously everyone knew what the Hammer was and what Herbie was coming into this year. They were sort of really, top level guys in their position. But Isaiah Katoa obviously spent the last couple of weeks on the bench and then out of the side. But for a large part of that season, he was probably the best young half under 23 in the comp. Max Plath as well, sort of come from nowhere. I don't remember Max Plath playing in 2023. This year he was a smoky for Origin at one stage. Like he's just so gritty. Filled in at hooker really well. Like I think their average age is just over 22 years old. Next year they got Finafuyaki coming down from the Cowboys. He'll be really good on an edge for him. Whether he starts or off the bench, it remains to be seen, but he'll be good. Then you got Averill on Jack Bostock, Jack Bostock, also under 25. Connolly Lemuel is 26, but he's only played about 60-odd games. So there's just a nice young foundation for them to build off of next year.
Well, then looking ahead, future looks pretty bright. I mean, new coaching as well because of Wayne Bennett, but you'd imagine Christian Wolf has had a pretty damn good apprenticeship under Wayne.
Yeah, I think of all the people to follow Wayne Bennett, obviously it's the Wayne Bennett curse that they sort of never do well. But I think Christian Wolf's probably the most qualified person to take over from Wayne Bennett in a coaching role. And he does have plenty of pieces to work with. Flegler might be back next year. Flegler will be back next year. Sorry, Tom Gilbert.
The other way around, Tom Gilbert definitely coming back, but Tom Flegler going under the knife.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But so we'll wish him all the very best.
Sure.
But Canberra Raiders, as the ladder would have it, they actually finished 9th. And I don't know, if there was a wild card round, I would have loved to have seen the Raiders. I don't know, I feel like they could have done something to mix up the finals. But, Dan, ultimately they miss out. What went wrong for them this year?
Yeah, look, I think the big flashpoint of the season for Canberra was the injury to Jamal Fogarty. Round 7 against the Broncos they were travelling pretty nicely at that stage, and they were 4-2.
Yep.
Entering round 7, Broncos sort of beat them quite easily, gave them a little bit of a reality check, and Fogarty was injured. I think early in that second half he came off with an injury. He missed a substantial part of the season. With him in the lineup, they won 8, lost 6. Without him, they lost 6, won 4. So obviously, there were some good wins while he wasn't there, but they missed his leadership, they missed his direction. He's one of the best kicking halfbacks in the game, general field kicking, I mean, and they did miss it. His injury, I guess, there was a silver lining for that injury was KO Weeks coming to the side.
Yep.
In the halves originally, then he moved to fullback, and I thought he was a revelation at fullback.
Yeah.
But he played well in the halves when needed to. But look, with Weeks and Ethan Strange there, and Adam Cook came in as well and played well, but they aren't here. They aren't the veteran presence that Jamal Fogarty is, and I think that really cost them during that middle stages there, when they probably lost some games where they should have won. And had that happened, had they won those games, they're sitting 7th or 6th. So
crazy.
That's probably the big the turning point for me for the Raiders was that injury to Fogarty.
Silver lining though, there were a few.
Yeah, I think so. Like I didn't have high hopes for the Raiders this season in terms of I thought they'd be quite decent, but finish 11th, 12th, 13th. I didn't think they'd be sort of knocking on the door of an 8 at the end of the season. But they're young guns. We saw, as I mentioned, Ethan Strange. He is being one of the top rookies this season. He might win a Rookie of the Year based on the fact Lachlan Galvin and Max Plath suspended, so that rules them out. But he'll be a worthy winner. He was fantastic at the start of the season. Ricky obviously gave him a break, gave him a game off sort of at the back end there, and explained that a young kid having the rigours of his first NRL season, basically playing in a position like 5/8, going to get to cop a lot of contact, run a lot of ball, make a lot of tackles, and big future ahead for Ethan Strange. Kyle Weeks is another one, came from Manly. That's been proven to be a really good pickup.
He was on the outer at Manly too.
Yeah.
Made a move to kind of save his career, but I guess.
Yeah, and he was quite highly regarded as a youngster.
Yeah.
Just didn't sort of get put the games together, at the Seagulls, whether that be he's behind some stars there, but he's come to Canberra. He's been able to flourish. And he was fantastic at fullback. So I think he's probably their fullback going forward.
Yeah, wow, because of course Jordan Rapiner heading over to the UK.
Gone,
But looking ahead, it seems like Ricky's really investing in youth because they've got another young guy, Savelio Tamale, coming down from the Dragons. And he is...
He debuted against them last week.
He is...
Chevy Stewart as well.
Chevy Stewart, they got some talent.
Savage,
I think they're
still young.
Yeah, a young guy, Owen Paddy won, I think, Jersey Flag Player of the Year for the competition. Yeah. He was from the Raiders. Adam Cook...
Yeah, New South Wales Cup.
Won New South Wales Cup Player of the Year. So they've got the building blocks.
Trey Mooney's good.
Yeah.
They won the minor premiership, Canberra at New South Wales Cup?
No, they just lost to North Sydney Bears, but they were, I'd say, form team of the competition.
So obviously Trey Mooney's another impressive forward. I think he had some really good games this year, and sort of I think when he gets some more minutes into his legs at NRL level, he'll be a really good player. So, plenty to like about Canberra, and I think they've done well. Roosters, Penrith, and win at the I know Panthers are a little bit depleted.
Yep.
But to beat those sides at the end of the season, sort of as they're preparing for a finals campaign, is a big tip of the cap to them. Yeah. So plenty to look forward for as a Canberra fan.
Yeah, sure. They always get their recruitment right as well.
Like Morgan Smithies.
Yeah.
Signing.
Oh.
Yeah. Another UK signing.
They get them right. Dragons. God, they're frustrating. Finished 11th, and I went back and I thought about what went wrong with them, and there were so many so many bits and pieces. Like they were consistently inconsistent. But I also went all the way back to December last year when Talatau Amone was deregistered for that off-field incident. And you have to remember, when Shane Flanagan arrived to the club, he probably thought my halves are going to be Talatau Amone and Ben Hunt.
Yep.
When he was deregistered, he's then had to shuffle a few deck chairs. In comes Kyle Flanagan, who I would have thought was going to probably be the bench utility.
Yep.
He starts at 5'8", and then of course they had the Ronald Volkman incident. So they lacked depth and they had to scramble. So that, we can't disregard that. As I mentioned, consistently inconsistent. I mean, they went down to Melbourne. Beat Melbourne in Melbourne, but then they just get spanked by the Eels in a must-win game. They were in the box seat to make the 8, and they fumbled the bag big time. Like it was just, but it kind of leads into my silver lining for them. I mentioned it, they broke that 25-year hoodoo to beating the Storm down in Melbourne, and the Storm were pretty much full strength as well. Like that's a major flex. And they looked like dead set finals contenders there. Zach Lomax's form on the wing was outstanding. Sucks that he's leaving, but
arguably one of the stories of the year.
I reckon,
actually, just in terms of the
background,
scrutiny, I guess for lack of a better word, at the start of the season when he was moved, and 100%. It was sort of like, as Lomax, he sort of doesn't really want to be playing on the wing, and the decisions, sort of led him to getting his first Origin debut, and he started Origin. So, quite remarkable, and obviously the move to the Eels mid-year sort of added juice to that, but
a great turnaround for his career. But it also feeds into looking ahead, the future. It looks bright because it's clear Shane Flanagan is the right man for the job. Yep. He went all in on that decision to move Zach Lomax to the wing. It was a master stroke. He's brought in guys like Damien Cook and Valentine Holmes for next year, and they're winners. They're representative players. And then, but you know what? The big question mark for me, and I've had this all season, Tyrell Sloan at fullback. I rate him. I love him. I think he's such an exciting player, but I think they need somebody else there challenging him for that number 1 jersey because they didn't have it this year. Back in New South Wales Cup, they were switching and they were moving through fullbacks like there was no tomorrow. Whoever put their
played fullback.
That Savelia Tamale, that Larkin King Togia, that whoever would put their hand up to play fullback played fullback. So they didn't have a genuine number 1. And I think had there been a genuine number 1 that was challenging him, I don't know, it might have brought out the best in him because we saw when he was dropped, he came back firing, and maybe having Valentine Holmes at the club might...
Iron sharpens iron. Val Holmes a great fullback in his own right. Flano's made no reservations about Sloan's sort of defensive deficiencies. Maybe Val Holmes is the man to come in there and sort of give him those little 1% pointers that only someone who's played fullback at a high clip before can give him because... Tyrell Sloan, I think he's a fullback or he's nothing. You know what I mean? He's not
100%.
You'd be wasting him on the wing, and I don't think he's a centre. Like he's a fullback or he's nothing. And I think getting him right is just such a big step. Like if they can nail the defensive side of things and just get him primed for a big year, it'll go massive towards what they do next year.
He's fantastic. The thing with Sloan is the difference between his best and his worst is quite considerable. And, the areas of his game, which is probably, aren't too red hot at the moment, or, definitely was a fact of him getting dropped this season, was his defence. And that's just effort, really.
Which seems like an easy fix, right?
Yeah, and I think if anyone can fix it, it's Flanagan. I know he's been there for a season already, but, I think Sloan, I think the best team is Sloan at fullback next year. This is Sloan at fullback and Val in the centres.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well, Corey Allen comes back from an ACL injury, but, that's a tough injury to return from. And then Cody Ramsey, his future is still up in the air. But, you know what? Like I said, the Dragons fumbled the bag, but now my expectations are for them. I think they have to play finals next year. Kyle, the Broncos. One of the stories of the season.
Have fun.
Not in a good way for Brisbane fans.
Everyone thought that it would be a grand final rematch this year.
It just wasn't. It just wasn't their year, and
I think the Broncos thought they were going to.
That might be what went wrong.
Well, there's plenty that I had for what went wrong. So there's the grand final hangover. There's the external noise and expectations that come with making a grand final, and not just making a grand final, but going within whiskers of winning one. And Eels in 2022 grand final, 2023 not great.
Yeah.
Souths in 2021 grand final. Even there, they were really close to winning that game. Not as close as Brisbane, but really close to winning that game. 2022, we sort of all know how that went. I got the injuries to Reynolds and Walsh were massive. I think the injury to Reynolds bigger than the injury to Walsh per se, because the drop off between Reynolds and Jock Madden is larger than the drop off between Reece Walsh and Tristan Saylor. Questionable preseason roster moves. They obviously let go of Tom Flegler. They let go of Herbie Farnworth. And the big one for me is they let go of Kurt Capewell.
And they didn't replace him. They promoted from within.
Yeah, promoted from within, which is fair enough. I think it's that's a good strategy to have. I think the Capewell one, it came early in December, but I think December, then you go into Christmas, they've got a whole new left edge essentially because it's gone. Selwyn Cobbo's been moved to left centre. Brendan Piacura has been moved to left edge back row. That's just not so much with the ball, but without the ball defending. You just got to get all your timings right and stuff like that. I think that really probably derailed them. Origin was one that was touted, but they had Origin last year and they got through it and they went to the grand final. So I'm not really sort of using that one.
Yeah.
There's questions always about Kevy's coaching ability, and none more so than sort of the last week or so. You got to remember the Selwyn Cobbo saying Kevy's not a good coach. Tyson Gamble saying Adam Reynolds is the go-to at the club for footy and, the team of footy during his time at the Broncos. There was questions about the players' attitude, defensive issues in the latter parts of the season. The game against the Dogs, they got ripped apart on the edges. The Dogs the Dogs' smaller pack, Brisbane big pack, Payne Haas, Corey Jensen, Pat Carrigan. Those guys are big boys, mobile boys. The Dogs went side to side, got holes on the edges, and then a couple of weeks later, it was the middle. The Dolphins got punchy through the middle, and Melbourne got punchy through the middle. Melbourne had luck outside, but they got punchy through the middle. There's that Harry Grant try that he just straight through.
And they didn't adjust on the run, too, in both of those games. Tough one. Silver lining. Is there any?
It's hard because it was such a spectacular failure of a season. But I sort of think the silver lining is that they have everything that they need to succeed in the club.
That's a good point.
They still have Adam Reynolds. Reece Walsh will be, better next year. They still have, Tony Staggs on his day is one of the best centres. Selwyn Cobbo, if he has a non-disrupted campaign, he'll be a really good centre as well. Carrigan, Haas, you won't get two better middles. Ezra Mann's really good on his day. And I also like what I saw from Blake Moser and Xavier Willison. Just a couple of young guys. Moser in particular, back half of the season, tough gig to come and sort of come off the bench in a team that was really struggling. But, he's got a lot of creativity out of the ruck that I thought was quite nice. And Willison sort of, he had his moments, but it's a really tough one for the Broncos.
So looking ahead then, I'm going to put it to both of you. Do they play finals next year?
Yeah. Payne Haas, well, you touched on it, Cole. Payne Haas, Adam Reynolds and Reece Walsh. I think they missed a combined just under 50% of games of the season.
Throw in Ezra Mann too.
Yeah, of course. Reece Walsh and Haas played about 14 games. I know there's Origin and mixed into that as well, but Reynolds was about 12 or 13. I just think I just don't think they'll get that unlucky with injuries again. Yeah. They're too good a side. And some of their best performances were really good.
Yeah.
They just lost their way at stages there.
Yeah. They've got to do it next year before Adam Reynolds retires. So
they've got to do it next year because they got their coaches' jobs on the line. If they come out if they start the season and they lose 5 or 6 of their first 10 games, the noise will be almost immeasurable and really so hard to overcome. It's just they need to start winning early, and then if they do that, they'll go through. But if they start losing real early, it's going to be the off-field noise might be too much.
And the thing in Brisbane is when they're winning, they're rock stars. When they're losing, get them out of there. All right, the Warriors. I had them top 4, potentially winning the premiership this year because they were one of the very few teams that only added to their roster. They didn't lose any firepower. But holy hell, from up the wires to... how disappointing. Yeah. They got a major reality check this season. They were the fairy tale story of last season. And I have to wonder if maybe they, came into the preseason. I don't want to use the word and say complacent because I know every player and coach will just go, no way. But you have to wonder if subconsciously they thought, all right, we've done all the hard yards during last season. We just need to build on it. And whether there was not a little bit of cockiness maybe, I'm not too sure. They also couldn't fly under the radar because everyone would have been focusing. No one would have seen them coming last year. This year, everyone saw them coming. Throw in the fact that Luke Metcalf suffered that horrific broken leg in round 4. Again, you spend the whole preseason training with him and Sean Johnson, and there goes, throw that out. Sean Johnson just wasn't the player that he was last season. There's no two ways about it. It was just a year that just didn't stack up to expectations.
Just on the Warriors as well, in the past, because how big rugby union's been in New Zealand, if they've had a poor year, it's mainly the media noise has mainly been Australian media noise because it's rugby league's more of an Australian game. But because of how popular the Wars are now, their bad performances were almost as focused on in New Zealand as they would have been over in Australia. Like I just wonder how much sort of that would have impacted them. Like that's almost a first for them really, because every game's sold out. But
they would have become rock stars last year, 100%. And then all of a sudden they're not delivering to those expectations. And then a win changes everything. And when you're losing everything, the noise is louder. So again, I feel like they'll learn from this. There were some silver linings though. There's some really exciting young talent coming out in New Zealand. Jacob Laban, I think he got their Rookie of the Year at the Simon Mannering medal the other night. Leka Halasima, remember his debut? Like he came on, I think he played on an edge.
He played in the centres.
It's a dog.
Yeah, played in the centres.
Yep, he played in the centres. Nearly scored from about 45 metres out, but this miraculous Bronson Cherry try saver held him up over the try. I don't know how, but like
he's exciting.
Yeah, he is good.
Mitch Barnett, best season to date.
Made his unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Got their Player of the Year at the awards night, and I thought Tamale Martin had a really good year as well. I thought he looked really good in the number 7 jersey, and when you look ahead, I wonder, does he replace Sean Johnson?
Probably. You'd think it would.
Yeah, it's a good game. That back to the Metcalf, you mentioned that. I think that was that rocked their season.
It derailed
really,
them big time.
Because their last however many games he played at the end of this season, he was near the best on the ground for those.
Yeah.
So that was a big loss. Tamari Martin, I think he's definitely earned there's a bit of water to go on the bridge for the start of next season, but definitely earn a role in the halves. A young player you didn't mention who I thought was excellent was Tane Tuapiki.
Oh, I love Tane Tuapiki. And I thought what was really interesting, was it the final round, their final round of the season, Andrew Webster moved to Chance, Nickel Crookstar to the centres and played Tane, and which was a timely reward because he was killing it in New South Wales Cup. Comes in and I don't know. He was
the best on ground when they upset the Penrith in Magic Round.
Question, fullback next year, Roger, are you moving Roger there?
I don't know, because at times if they got the board when they got the board to him and they were flowing, it worked. I don't know. That's a hard one. They got 3 guys that you could easily play at fullback.
I'd go Tane Tuapiki at fullback.
Yeah, all right.
I don't know. Look, they might put Roger there, but I thought if they were going to do that this year, they would have.
Yeah.
There was a lot of opportunity for them to, and they didn't. I don't know whether Roger wanted to. But when he did play fullback, I think their record might have been 2 or 3 games. I'm not sure, but they definitely won more than they lost when he played fullback. So. Yeah, it depends. Will Charnge want to play centre? Who knows? A lot to go. But I think Tane Tuapiki is too good to be not in that side.
I think, and looking ahead at next year, I mean, they lose Adam Fanua-Blake, but they add James Fisher-Harris. I mean,
huge.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I reckon that this was a reality check, and next year they should bounce back. Yeah. Gold Coast Titans. New era under Des. Started a bit clunky.
Strange year.
Came really good.
Yeah, strange.
And then...
Admittedly, I thought they'd be a top 8 team this year.
Really?
I did.
Coming into the season?
Yeah, I did. I thought that. I just thought, the start was their undoing.
Yeah.
They missed the kick by 8 lengths, basically. They lost the first 6 games and lost Tino in round 3, which is a big loss, obviously.
Yeah, massive.
I just think with the year with Des had a year there under the belt, I think they can improve next year for sure. There were some really good signs. They thrashed the Warriors that game. Their attack was humming at different stages throughout the year. But defensively, they were really ordinary.
Yeah.
I thought they'd be better. That was probably the area I thought they would sort of maybe they'd be a little bit more improved with, but they sort of regressed in that area. So that was the big disappointment for me. But look, we know Des Hasler in the past, but he's a very good defensive-minded coach. He can sort of turn teams around, and I think he'll be able to do that. But he'll need a big turnaround on defence because they were one of the worst defensive teams in the league.
Big decision as well in the off-season. AJ Brimson, Jaden Campbell, Keanu Kinney.
Yeah, it's
got to be Brimo's.
This has been
Brimo's
sitting.
Center, surely.
This has been sitting on my mind for dead set at least 3 months.
Well, Campbell I think's a 6.
Right, and Keanu Kinney's a 1.
Yeah. I think Brimson has to. Where else do you put him?
You can put him right.
I was
right
waiting
center.
so the back end of that season, there was like switching and swapping because Philip Sami was sick and then someone was injured, and we never really got to see what Des was thinking.
Yep.
And then when everyone was fit, they go, oh, AJ Brimson's going to go under the knife and
Yeah.
just have an early mark. And I thought, oh, I don't want to wait until next season to find out what happens. But he'd be on big money, AJ. He's on a long-term deal, but I don't know where. Like Philip Sami was great in the sense. I
think
don't.
Philip Sami has to be in the
I don't.
17 when he's fit.
Yeah, I don't know what Des does. It's a good headache.
And Brian
to
Kelly,
have.
Brian Kelly's good. The wingers are good as well. So Sami can't just move to the wing. Like it's.
I have something outrageous to put out there.
Yeah, here we go.
AJ Brimson to play fullback at the Dragons.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very outrageous.
I thought you were about to say like AJ
Yeah.
Brimson to lock forward or
That's
something.
No.
that is what I was expecting.
I was like, no, okay. Well, yeah. I've just given Sloan a big rap. So
He doesn't have to necessarily
No.
play, but he could probably play in the centres at the Dragons too. I don't know.
the thing is, the fullback position at the moment is absolutely stocked.
I know.
You go through every team, and there's not a. I would have said maybe at the halfway point of the year, the only team that was like you wouldn't really be sure about who their future fullback would be for the next 2 or 3 years would be Canberra because they had Rapana playing there, and he was probably going to be leaving at the end of the year. And then Kai Weeks came and emerged, who, he's got a bit of work to do at fullback, but he was very good.
Yeah.
He was very good in limited time there. So. In terms of like another club, I'm sure AJ Brimson would definitely be in the top 16 fullbacks.
100%. You look at someone like Suafalongo on the bench for the Storm, sometimes 18th man. So, you'd hate to be a fullback at the moment. All right, well, let's move along to the Parramatta Eels. Oh, gosh.
I'm going to say probably the worst performing team compared to their expectations.
The biggest disappointment this year.
Yeah.
I got to give you some insight. I went to a training session in their preseason and I interviewed a stack of their players, and I genuinely thought that they were going to bounce back this year in the way that the Broncos bounced back from 2022 to 2023, because talking to them, you could see how genuinely they were hurt and embarrassed by what happened last season. And boy, did they disappoint. But what went wrong? Mitchell Moses, like that injury, and this is a hill that I will die on. The Eels killed themselves by not having a like-for-like, genuine backup number 7 ready to go. So when they let Jake Arthur leave the club, they didn't replace him. And Dejan Arce, great player, but he's not a like-for-like halfback that's in New South Wales Cup playing halfback every single week. He's playing here, there, and everywhere, and his versatility is his asset. They needed a halfback. Like, it was very clear in Brad Arthur's coaching plan in that 2022 season when they made the grand final just how important the halves were. So much so he was happy to put Jake Arthur on the bench and have him not play any minutes at all so long as he was there as an insurance plan. So that's clear how important the halves were. And then they came into this season with no backup and they were completely exposed for that. Mitchell Moses, that was a terrible injury.
Yep.
He's out. That kind of just snowballed into Brad Arthur's sacking.
Yeah.
And then just to add, I guess, insult to injury, you've got Ethan Sanders signing with the Raiders, Blaze Talangi signing with the Panthers, Matt Arthur signing with the Knights. So their next generation of players.
Charlie Geimer wants to leave as well, apparently.
He's a good little player too. Silverline.
and Blaze's younger brother apparently weighing up a move to Penrith as well, I read the other day.
They just need to, I don't know, blow it up and start again. Silver lining, I struggled with this. I think the silver lining is they didn't get the wooden spoon.
Yep.
As Clint Gutherson said in the press conference after Spoon Bowl, no one remembers who came 15th, 16th.
Yep.
Everyone remembers who came 17th, and he has a point there. One other silver lining is they did secure the next big thing in coaching in Jason Riles. He has a massive job, but I suppose, everyone was interested in signing Jason Riles, and the Eels got their man.
Yep.
I would still, I don't know about you guys, but I would still, based on, assuming they get through the off-season healthy and all that sort of stuff, I would still think they'd be favourites to be in the finish in the top 8 next year.
I think so.
I know it was against the Tigers, but they showed what they can do when they're fully on.
100%.
They've got an aging roster, I guess, but Moses was outstanding when he was healthy, obviously, and there's some good pieces there they can work with. I think they really should be. I think they have a pretty tough draw this year too.
You look at their side. Clint Gutherson never lets you down, right?
Yeah.
Mitchell Moses, one of the best halves in the game.
Yep.
Dylan Brown, great news that he hasn't ruptured his ACL.
Yep.
That's amazing news. He'll be back for round 1. Add Zach Lomax to that back line.
Penasini's,
Yep.
if not the most powerful centre in the comp.
Yep.
Penasini's a gun.
You add in Isaiah Iongi from the Panthers.
Yep.
He'll be a good backup. to Clint Gutherson.
Yep.
And then they're also, thank goodness, I've realised they need a backup to Mitchell Moses, and they've got their eyes on Dean Hawkins at the Rabbitohs, and he's a very like-for-like player. So I agree with you. I expect them to be playing finals next year, even though it's Jason Riles' first season.
Good enough forward pack to do it, really. Like, Paulo, Campbell Gillard, Hopgood's a freak. The back rows are great. Bryce Cartwright on his day is unbelievable. Hooker is probably it's a big,
I rate Brendan Hands, but I do agree that they, okay, I've got another one to throw out there. Jaden Brayley, he was tapped on the shoulder, right? To the Eels.
If Jason Riles likes a stand and deliver hooker, yeah. But
he's a clever player. He's experienced.
If Jason Riles likes his...
With Brendan Hands off the bench, bringing on a bit of spark.
Yeah, I think...
Don't hate it.
Look, I think he's the best available hooker.
Yeah.
I think he's the best available
I'm
hooker.
just trying to move some pieces around.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll be much of an upgrade. I know he's a veteran presence, Brayley. Very good on his day, but I thought Brendan was quite good when he was actually given the opportunity.
Hands, but I don't know, 80 minutes. Sometimes I am a big believer in playing two hookers. I think hooker is such an important position. You've got your hands on the ball most, and you're arguably making more decisions than anybody else on the field. And the moment you're getting fatigued, your decision-making lapses, your service, doesn't get so good.
Who was the New South Wales hooker in the under-20s this year?
Ooh.
They'd be a good pickup for the Eels.
Matt Arthur.
Yes.
Oh,
there we go.
I think next year they bounce back.
It's hard to see them not.
But also really keen to see how Jason Riles goes in that job. Rabbitohs, Dan.
Oh, geez,
second last. It's like, okay, before we get into this, did you guys have them in your 8 this year? Did you think last year was just chuck that to the side, you've got the roster to go all the way?
Yep, I thought they'd make the 8. I wasn't thinking they'd be... Yeah, well, I definitely thought they'd make the 8. I didn't think it would be one of the top premiership hopes, but there was just so much that went wrong. We could do a whole episode on South Sydney alone, but obviously, went to Vegas, good experience up there and that, but they got the loss there. That was the start of it, and then obviously got much worse after that. Jason Demetriou sacked start of May.
Yeah, looks like
7 or 8 rounds into the season.
Looks like they didn't really get a handle on whatever was rotting at the end of last season. They never actually really stopped.
Yeah, well, that's it. You can obviously trace it back to back then.
Yeah,
the Sam Burgess walk out and all that sort of stuff. Latrell wasn't healthy for much of the year. Then he plays one of the best Origin games as a centre in recent memory, and then he comes back injured. Obviously the white substance scandal at the end of the year just sort of rubs salt into the wound, I guess, on what has been a horror season for South Sydney. So, and moving on to the silver lining, they cannot be possibly any worse than that.
Campbell Graham's back next year.
Campbell Graham, that's massive.
You forget about Campbell Graham, and also think about the halves too. Lachlan Ilias drops,
broke his leg,
then he breaks his leg. Dean Hawkins comes in. It took a while for Ben Hornby to make that switch that everyone wanted to see and move Jack Whiten into the halves. Alex Johnston was injured. Jai Arrow, Cameron Murray spent some time out too. It just I
think their forwards are a little disappointing for me this year. Keon Kolomatangi, when he was moved in the middle, was very good.
Fantastic.
David
Cam Murray didn't have his best year. I don't think he was still. We have high expectations for a guy like that, but he was probably not the best. Sean Kepi, I expected a bit more from him this year. There was talks about him playing, Origin at the start of the season. Like he was talking about it. I think he was saying that's what he was like to press for, and he didn't really deliver this year. I just think they need a bit more punch from their forwards. Would let them down, obviously, and injuries cost them as well. But with that said, you can't make a whole. While a lot went wrong, they were pretty ordinary too.
Are your halves? Are you sticking with Cody Walker and Jack Whiten in the halves?
I don't know. I think Cody Walker's played really well at halfback at stages this year. Jack Whiten, I love Jack Whiten. I just think he went missing in games too this year as well. I thought he was better at 5'8" than he was at centre because you get your hands on the ball more at 5'8" than and that. But you got Lewis Dodd coming.
And Jamie Humphries as well.
Jamie Humphries is a guy who will be pressing first grade selection this year.
I'd pick one of them at halfback.
Because they are going to lose Dean Hawkins and they've told Lachlan Ilias he can leave. Yeah, interesting hook.
You probably put Whiten and Campbell Graham your centres.
I would
Yeah.
play Whiten in the back row.
In the back
I would
row.
play Whiten a left edge back row, big John Sutton vibes.
Ooh.
And I'd get like Isaiah Tass next to him at left centre, and I'd just let that left edge roam. But they have you and Aiken as well, so that's the thing.
When you start piecing it together, like it's a great roster.
it's a great
Tyrone
team.
Munro, like he missed a chunk of the year. Put him and Alex Johnson. You got speed,
Yeah.
try-scoring machines on
100%.
both edges. Campbell Graham, great defensive
Yep.
centre. If you were to play Jack Whiten on the other side, you work your way in. I don't know where you put Keelan Colomatungi, but somewhere.
I reckon Wayne will play him in the middle.
Yeah.
Wayne seems to like him in the middle.
Oh, I don't know why they wouldn't after what
him
he
in
showed.
him in the front row.
Yeah,
David Wiley's
Yeah.
Their front rowers this year weren't great when Colin Matungi was in the middle at lock.
Yep.
He was really good. Just need a couple upgrades to their back line, I think. A couple of guys in there this year probably aren't up to NRL standard, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that was because there was injuries and all that sort of stuff. Put Campbell Graham back, Colin Matungi in the middle, and then Ewan Aiken adds.
Yeah,
plenty of
great
touches.
He's
versatility
so
too.
good. Seriously, he's so underrated.
Latrell, are you keeping him at fullback?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're better when he's at fullback than
Yep.
when he's not at fullback, and I don't think they have the team yet. I'm not too sure they have the team to, if they move him to left centre, get him good enough football to then affect the game. I think at fullback, he's not going to do your Dylan Edwards 300-metre a game fullback. I wouldn't want that from him.
Yeah.
He just needs to influence the game when he's in the attacking half.
Use his presence.
The other problem is their wingers aren't the best coming out of their own end.
Well, they're not. That's not their
Alex
strength.
Johnson
They're not
is
Brian
not-
To'os. Yeah, or a Jacob Carras.
But that's where Campbell Graham and Jack White and Isaiah Tass and those guys will come in and do that heavy lifting. But I'd leave Latrell at the back.
We kind of touched on it, the big silver lining and the looking ahead. Wayne Bennett returned.
Yeah.
Say no more. Like, he took him to a grand final in 2021. The players love him. If there's anyone that can kind of, put their magic dust on a club and turn it around, it's Wayne Bennett, hence why the Eels tried to get him as well. All right, well, let's finish off on our 3-time wooden spooners, the West Tigers. Kyle, what went wrong?
Look, it's very easy to look at the club that's just won their third consecutive wooden spoon and say pretty much everything went wrong, but I don't know if I'd go that hard. I think the worst thing for the Tigers this year was discipline. They were the most sin bin team in a single season in NRL history. So they had 16 players sent to the sin bin. They had games where they had 2 players sent to the sin bin, and teams can survive with 2 in the sin bin. The Dogs beat the Knights at Accor early in the season with 2 players in the sin bin, not simultaneously, but still. But I just think when you're a team like the Tigers and you just don't have the runs on the board and that winning mentality, losing to that many people to the sin bin is massive. They had 25 charges by the match review committee. They had 6 players suspended for a total of 8 times. So Caesar and Justin Olam were suspended twice, and they all spent 16 matches on the sideline. So that's Aiden Caesar, your starting halfback, Lachlan Galvin, your best young player in your 5'8" on the sideline. Justin Olam, probably your best centre. Isaiah Papali'i, one of your best forwards. David Clemmer, your best front rower. Like, these guys missing time doesn't help. So I think discipline's massive. And then, like, they just had so much off-field stuff as well. Like, it's very hard to ignore the off-field stuff. Like, the Stefano, where's he going? Where was he going to go? Like, all that kind of stuff up in the air. Bateman's mid-year loan and sort of the pressure that come with. Shane Richardson was in the UK earlier in the year shopping players around.
You could just imagine what that did to the mentality.
Benji's Fiji trip, and then right at the end of the year, the threat from Balmain to try and split from the club. Like, just all these little things that just would eat away at
And
you.
it doesn't take much for the media to latch onto a story when it's on the Tigers and just,
100%.
silver linings.
Yeah, silver linings is definitely the young players that they got. Like, they've seriously got so many good young players that, like, they're super raw at the moment because they're, obviously young and haven't played heaps of football. But, like obviously Galvin is a freak. Like, Gus Gould said he's like the best teenager he's ever seen. Yeah. Which is some rap considering the amount of footy Gus has watched. Like, Samuel Fainu was unbelievable at points this season. Like, Fanua Pole, he's got a big future in him. Talon De Silva's really talented. Dream Bullard is obviously forget about him because he missed the last couple of weeks of injury.
And you go one step lower, Heath Mason.
Heath Mason's good. Sonia Taruva's only 21 and he's joining next year. Like, it's just crazy.
Well, looking ahead, I mean, all eyes on Jerome Luai, right?
Yep. Big Jerome showed this year that he can lead a team as a number 7. He's got players around him that can sort of affect the scoreboard. He's got Lachlan Galvin there. Like, I think Luai will go there with not so much a chip on his shoulder, but he's shown for 10 or 12 rounds this year that he can be the main guy. But I think still going into next year, because it's at the Tigers and not the Panthers, I think there'll still be massive doubts about was this 2024 sort of a bit of an anomaly? And I think he'll have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder that he'll want to and a point to prove. And I just think, I think he'll work wonders for him. Seriously, I think just the leadership and stuff, like we see it with Stephen Crichton at the Dogs. I think you can't underestimate just how much leadership and influence he'll have on that young team.
I think Abby Coruscant will sigh a little bit of relief when Jerome
when he
turns up,
returns from his 4-game suspension.
Abby's probably tried to take some things from Penrith and implement them at the Tigers, and you can see sometimes he's jumping out of dummy half and there's no one, that's on the same page as him. Throw in Jerome Luai. They've come from similar systems. They've had success. That's a good spine. Jerome Luai, Lachlan Galvin, Jareen Buller, Abby Coruscant.
It's similar because when the Dogs signed Reid Marnie that first season, there wasn't a whole lot going out, and he would jump out of dummy half and skip, and then he'd try to overplay his hand, and it would be an error. It wouldn't do anything. There's probably times where Appy's tried to do that this year.
Yeah.
He just needs one guy that just knows what he's sort of doing to get there, and then the rest of the team will follow.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well,
I'm really high on the Tigers next year.
Are we tipping them to lift themselves up?
They might go to 9th.
Oh, don't do it to them.
They'll improve. They won't make the 8. I don't think. I just think there's too much improvement from some of the teams we've mentioned that I think are better than the Tigers at this stage and will be next year. I think there's, like Parramatta and the Gold Coast. I think they'll really improve sharply. Tigers will definitely improve. They will not win wooden spoon. It'd be crazy to think with that roster they have next year that they will. But they won't be in the media as nearly as much next year, I don't think, because their performances on the field will, keep the heat off Benji and their players, I think so.
Well, that's 2024, the season wrapped up for those 9 teams. They can sail off into the Bali sunset and enjoy a premature off-season. For the remaining 8 teams, though, this is where the fun really begins. So thank you, Dan and Kyle, for jumping on this week. And for our listeners, keep your eyes peeled, I should say, for our club-by-club end-of-season reviews on foxsports.com.au. Catch you next time.